Hi students, I'm sorry I ran out of time and I did not want to cut our discussion about the summative short. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read this to you, and then I'm just going to give you some input and insight about what you should be doing. After exploring the role of social responsibility in Of Mice and Men and documenting quotes from the characters, which is why it's so important to use your graphic organizers, let's apply the quotes and social statements inferred from the text selection to our first project that critiques society of this time period, so during the 1930s. Naturalism movement. Keep in mind that Steinbeck was an author of the naturalism movement. He writes in third person as an outsider observer, dispassionate and scientific. Naturalist artists were focused on the harsh realities of life and view the universe as an unsympathetic entity without morality. And as you read Of Mice and Men, and some of you already know from reading To Kill a Mockingbird about some of the harsh realities that occurred during the 1930s, so you already have some sort of understanding. Life isn't judged through a lens of good and evil or the supernatural. The goal of the naturalist writer was to present reality in great detail in order to teach through the observation of the natural world and look at it as a scientific natural order of cause and effect. Of Mice and Men is written as social criticism and is therefore critiquing injustices of the world. And your job is to identify some of those social critiques through either the characters or just the social injustice itself and talk about them. Okay? So your job is to answer these questions by using quotes and images on your collage. If your focus is on a single character and the social critiques they represent, answer the following in your project. So if you're thinking back to that graphic organizer that I talked about before, so if you're focusing on a single character, it's like you just focusing on Tom Robinson. And one of his social critiques would have been racism. Okay? And these are the questions that you're going to answer, however, for Of Mice and Men. What is Steinbeck's message about your assigned character? What role did your character play in the story? How does Steinbeck use your character to make a statement about the harsh realities of life in the 1930s? And honestly, if you go through and watch some of that background information in some of those videos, it's really going to help solidify your understanding about the harsh realities of living during this time. Okay? So make sure you do that. All of these resources are there at your fingertips, and it's just only going to help you with your final project. It's going to help make your final project stronger and your comprehension stronger. Most importantly, your comprehension. What is your character critiquing about society? So those are the questions that you're going to want to ask if you're focusing on a single character. Next, if your focus is on a single societal issue, and going back again to those graphic organizers I talked about, a single societal issue could be racism. And the characters who reinforce that belief answer the following in your project. So if we're thinking about racism in To Kill a Mockingbird, definitely a character who reinforces that is Tom Robinson, Atticus Finch, Jem Finch, Scout Finch, okay? Maudie. So there's many characters that would reinforce that one single societal issue, okay? And you're going to answer these questions. What is, of course, for Of Mice and Men, though. What is Steinbeck's message about the societal norm? And here's an example, racism, just like I was giving you. What role did each character contribute with that societal norm in the story? So if we go back to Kill a Mockingbird, think about the character of Bob Ewell and how he contributed to that societal norm versus how Atticus Finch contributed to that societal norm. Okay, so we're juxtaposing the two because they both contributed very, very differently. And the last question, how does Steinbeck use the characters to make a statement about the harsh realities of life in the 1930s? What are your characters critiquing about society? Requirements. Use significant quotes that represent key aspects of the character or societal issue and the lessons learned from this point of view. These quotes should be cited in MLA format, and we will have some lessons about that to guide you into proper citation. Use significant images that represent the character or social issue physically and symbolically. Be prepared to explain the significance of these images. Create a depiction of your character or the social issue given the details from the text in the center of your paper. So just to go back to To Kill a Mockingbird again, because I know many students are familiar with it from freshman year, if you were depicting the character of Tom Robinson, you might not draw a image, or if you're using Sketchnote, and I'll get to that in a bit, you may find an image of a mockingbird instead. And maybe that mockingbird is going to have an impaired wing, for example. Okay? In large letters above your depiction, write the character and his or her name or the social issue of focus. It depends what you choose. Now, I kind of jumped down here before as I was talking about the depiction when I mentioned sketch notes or sketchbook. I don't remember which I said, but you must use Adobe Spark, Canva, or Google Slides for your collage. You could also use the sketchbook app. So if your strength is art and drawing, go ahead and use a sketchbook app. But if that's not your strength, please do not use that app. And I sort of was getting a little bit ahead of myself when I was talking about if you draw a picture of a mockingbird, not everybody's going to draw a picture of a mockingbird. You might just find an image. But if you would draw one, you could definitely use a sketchbook app. So you need to use what works for you. Please don't just use something you're comfortable with. So don't just use Google Slides for the sake of using Google Slides, because that's what you're comfortable with. Adobe Spark is awesome, and I know many of my freshmen used Adobe Spark last year when we were in the middle of the research project, which, yes, did get cut short a bit due to the pandemic and quarantine and staying at home, but I know many students used it. And now we're going to look down here at our rubric, and I'm not going to go through every single category in the rubric, but I'm going to talk about the exceeding category here. Logical as well as connotative and figurative inferences are made about the character or social issue. So, for example, again, I'm going to go back and use To Kill a Mockingbird as an example. If I said, well, he's just a Cunningham, or that figures, that's what a Yule is all about. Think about when I'm saying those particular sentences, what that connotates. Now, we know that the Cunninghams were hard workers. They lived out in the country, but they didn't necessarily fit on that top notch of that social hierarchy. And we know exactly what people thought of the Yule, so you can get the connotation behind that. And if you haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird, if you think about just being a Wisconsinite or somebody from Wisconsin, a lot of people in Wisconsin like the Packers. But if somebody were to say, oh, that guy is a Cowboys fan, you're going to get the connotation, right? Like my husband, he's a Cowboys fan. So you're going to get the connotation of what that means in Wisconsin if you're a Cowboys fan, right? Just by that sentence and the way I said it, okay? All right, let's see here, moving on. Numerous or carefully selected specific evidence creates an insightful conclusion about the character's role as social criticism or overall social critique the novel makes on the issue. And honestly, I felt like I've talked about this a lot when we went through the graphic organizer. So and even up above as I was explaining this, so I'm not going to go through and explain that again. The collage, quotes are cited properly, and I've talked with you about that. That's something we'll talk about in class, and if you're not in class, there will be some videos or some resources to help you with that, okay? And the collage is creative, applying multiple dimensions of pictures, words, colors, textures, and other media to create the messaging. Okay? So you want to be creative with this. You want to have fun with this, okay? So if you think there's some major topics, you might want to put some topics on your collage and different images on your collage. And when it talks about textures, that's really something that I think as we start to read of Mice and Men is going to be more concrete to you. Okay? Because I'm specifically thinking about some examples from Of Mice and Men right now. Doesn't mean that it would have to just apply to that, but that's what I'm thinking right now as I'm talking about this. Let me see. The collage was submitted electronically and on time. Okay? So that's your exceeding end of the rubric. Okay? So for these middle portions here, all I can really say is most likely if you're losing some points here, you're not obviously following directions, but what I'm predicting is maybe that students won't necessarily always use significant quotes or strong evidence, okay? And if you're struggling with that and you're not sure, then you can always ask me about that. And then, of course, the minimal, I'm just going to let you read that on your own, and you can see the points down below. Okay. So hopefully I covered that well enough. I'm sure I missed something because it's after 8 at night on a Saturday and I'm tired. But if you have questions, you can always email me, or you can set up a Teams appointment with me, or you can pop on the last 10 minutes of my English 2 classes, which only happen on Orange days. So any of those options work for you. But yeah, that's about all I have for you. And like I said, if you have questions, contact me in one of the various forms that I just mentioned. Thanks.